Today we're demonstrating 7 foil techniques. This is my lovely model, Tammy. And as you can see, Tammy has a little fadage in the ends from previous color. So the technique that I'm going to be demonstrating today is a technique for an add-on service utilizing the 7 foil techniques. So I'm going to use a demi-permanent color from scalp to ends. And then my foil placement is going to start at the part. I'm going to do a diagonal foil here. And then I'm going to do a diagonal foil here. Do a diagonal foil here. And that's going to be 3 foils in the front. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to do a pivotal foil technique in the back using slicing technique and doing 4 foils just around the crown area. So that will be my 7 foil technique.
Okay, so this is my model Annie. And what we're going to do for her today is we're going to start off in a crescent type moon section, and you can take a look at the sectioning on the head sheet, and it'll be easier for you to see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to section it off so we have like a half moon, and then I'm going to start my foils in the front, and as I work my way back, they're going to pivot around the head. And there's a couple of reasons that I want to do this. The first reason is she had at one time a demi-permanent color on her hair, but it's faded off quite a bit. And so we did a test to make sure that I could lift her with color, and I can. So what I'm going to be using on her is going to be a level 8 with 40 volume. And what we're looking for is sort of a bronzy, brown, sun-kissed look. So it's not going to be really dramatic. And then the placement, what that's going to do is have it fall drapier on the heavy side of the head, and you'll just see little tiny baby foils on the opposite side of the head. So I'm going to get it sectioned off and get started, and I'm going to pass it over to Mary Gail.
Thanks, Maria. It's amazing what 7 foils can actually do to change and enhance the look. With my model, Michelle, we're actually going to be doing a low light. Michelle has come into me also with previous hair color. And that happens often with many of our clients. So what I want to do with Michelle is just accentuate the shape, create more movement. Also, because of Michelle's versatility in her styles, she goes from wearing her hair smoother to naturally curly. So even as far as her look goes, we want to keep that so she changes it up all the time, and it looks very interesting, and it gives it more dimension inside. I'm also going to be using a demi color to do the deepening of that color, so we can really see some pretty swish. And so as I go along, I'm going to be doing my foil placement in what we call a sun ray. And what this sun ray is going to do is actually work with Michelle's natural parting. We're going to be doing, again, vertical foils, so everything falls in very discreet, but we're going to keep walking right around the head, starting much the way Mindy did, but keep working through it. But never, the connection in the center is never going to have any of the foils connecting together. So everything stays separate, so you don't end up with one spot that just kind of looks like it's bled together. So I'm also going to get started, and I'll pass it back to Mindy.
Okay, so in my tone-on-tone technique, utilizing the 7 foil technique as an add-on service, I'm applying the demi-permanent color from scalp to ends, and then after I get the demi-permanent color on, I'm going to mix up my, I'm choosing to use a lightener today with a lower volume developer, and I'm going to then start my foil placement, which I'll show you when I get to that point. And Maria?
Okay, so my section's completed, and as you can see, let me just get that a little bit tighter for you. It looks like a moon, a crescent type shape on the top of her head. So the idea now is I'm going to start in the front on a slight angle, and as I move towards the back, pivot around the head. And I am going to weave this, but the idea then is I'm going to weave it, and it's going to be a really loopy, chunky, more of a chunky weave, but not so fat that it looks like I put an actual chunk in the hair. So I'll come back and show you that once I have 1 or 2 in.
I'm going to do, even with my little bit of slice that I'm working with Michelle's hair, I'm going to do it almost like I would do a standard foiling technique, where I'm taking the hair itself I'm taking a very thin slice, just enough that I can still see my rat tail comb through the hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Michelle just to bring her head down. In between my first and second finger, I'm going to be placing the hair, looking at the palm of my hand. Then I'm going to take my foil, hold the foil at the bottom of my hand, putting the comb at the bottom with my teeth down and my tail on the inside. Take my thumb, push it towards me. When I lift this up, you can see I'm only about 1 inch to 1.5 inches away from Michelle's scalp. That's going to give me a lot of stability. When I hold this flat, I can get just a beautiful tension that's happening right at the scalp area. So this way my foils don't slip and I'm not going to get any bleeding. I also want to start with my product at least 3/4 of an inch away from her scalp. Once I get that tension inside, I'm going to move all the way out to the ends, make sure that I've got enough product on the hair. Once I get my ends thoroughly saturated, I'm going to go back to the scalp. I'm just going to come around, and I want to almost straddle my hands inside so I can get a little bit closer, and I'm just going to fuse that right into Michelle's natural color with the tip of my brush. So nothing's laying it on when I finish. I don't want to be finishing here. I want everything to look real natural. So as Michelle's hair grows out, everything looks just perfectly natural, and she doesn't have anything that looks like a strong regrowth line. So throughout all of my placements, I'm going to take the end of my foil and I'm going to marry them end to end so nothing's overlapping into that area. I'm going to smooth out my foil with the back of my tail comb, and I'm going to just make a little anchor with my tail, flip it in and secure my package, and then flip it in again and secure my package. So it just looks all like just a beautiful little package going on inside. And you can see nothing's really showing. I don't have any bleeding right on Michelle's scalp area. So I'm going to continue around, but never meeting these points together. There's always going to be a separation between them.
Okay, I'm almost finished with my application of the demi-permanent color. And as you can see, I'm working in vertical sectioning to apply it, especially in front of the ear to the hairline. This way, it keeps the color off the skin, and you don't have to worry about the staining of the skin. But also notice that I kept the part, her natural part, during the application so that it'll be easier for me when I go in to start my foil technique, that I know exactly where she's going to wear and style her hair.
Okay, so this is the third foil that I have in the hair, and in a second I'll lift that up so you can see what's going on underneath there. I always find that the more you touch the foils with your fingers, the more they start to look not so neat. So the more folding you do with the comb, the neater that the foils stay. So if you take a peek at these, what you can see is that they're starting to pivot. So we had the first one that was narrow, and then we moved into the second one. It was a little bit wider. Now the next one that I'm going to put in is going to be more of a pivot into the shape. So again, what we're doing is we're going from here, we'll be moving here, we'll start to pivot around the head. The other thing too that I want to point out is what I'm doing is a big weave, and even though it's a big weave, it's really not a chunky technique. You could make it a chunky technique if you wanted to, but the idea behind this is that it's still going to blend in, but it is going to show up. So you want to take a medium-sized section, take your tail comb, small circles, bigger the circle, loopier the actual weave starts to look. So if I wanted to do it small, I would do little circles. And now, since I'm looking for a bigger weave, what I want to do are bigger circles in order to pick up just those 3 pieces. So now I'm going to place my foil And you can use the tail comb to get it in there, or if you just want to place it up there, whatever works best for you. So I slide that in, bring the foil down, hold it tight to the hair, take the brush, apply the color away from the edge. Once I get to this point, I can hold it with the brush, move my hand around to the top, and apply my product. Once I'm at that point, I can pretty much let go, and I can go back underneath. Okay, so the idea of the 7 foil placement, for her, this is the only service that she's having today. So if she was a client that came in for a haircut, and I said, you know, I have this great new technique, looks like a moon, I'm gonna give you a little bit of drama to your new shape. The other thing that it does is it creates some interest in the salon, because, you know, people say, that doesn't look like anything I've seen before. What's going on over there? And it's a great way to boost your color business. Again, the more you fold with the comb, the neater the foils stay. What you got going on over there, Mary Gail?
You know, it was interesting that when you were talking about some of the clients that come into us, and when they see that we're advertising the 7 foils, it's interesting that you would think, how much difference can 7 foils actually make in a look? And it's amazing, because once you even get people interested in looking at things with dimension, I think they really start to see our true artistry in what we do. Even if it's just 7 foils, it's like that first step. With Michelle, she's had previous color, and so many of the clients that we're going to run into are going to be experiencing that same, they've got some kind of color on their hair that they've had before. So what can I do that's a little bit different? And just to change it up just a little bit, to give them those bits of nuances. What I think is going to happen is, even with Michelle, once I'm done doing her 7 foils, I'm going to utilize this same color as a toner. So I think clients start asking for things that are even more than what they first initially thought they were going to get. It's just like 7 foils, but we can do things that add more richness, add more shine. It's just amazing. And one of the things that I want to point out too, with Michelle's foils, is there's never any stopping point. There's never like a blunt line that's going around her head. Depending upon the round of Michelle's head, what I want to do is just have it look so natural. Just gives it that just beautiful glow without it looking like artificially we've put the foils in. Just going to add a little bit more color to those ends. And we'll tuck it in again, smooth it out with our tail. And you can see that even with these 7 foils, I'm just coming in to my last few. Now, even with this foil, because I'm so soft at the scalp, to get it out of my way, I'm just going to very gently flip it inside out. So this way, as I keep working my 7 foils around, again, nothing's bleeding out of my foil itself. Everything is just going to sit right inside of it. Again, making sure that I've got that little gap. This is going to be my second to the last and my last foil.
Okay, I am going to put in my very last foil next. So this is foil number 6. You can tell that the foil pattern is starting to follow around like a moon shape. So when I move into this very last section, what I want to do is incorporate some of what's in this little point here as my shape. So we're going to go around the back. And this way what will happen is some of the hair that's been foiled will fall to the back section. So you'll be able to get sort of like some highlight all over the head. There will be some hair spilling onto all areas of the head. Though it'll be subtle in the color, in the tone, you'll still be able to see a difference. And 7 foils really can affect the entire area of the head. Now, what you don't want to do is get into the habit of only selling 7 foils. So you don't want to use gigantic foils, 7 of them, cover the whole head, and have to give it a sale price. You do, however, want to use this technique to introduce your clients to color, as well as enhancing a base color or getting them into foils by moving them out of a demi-service. So all of those things can work to your benefit just by introducing them to 7 foil techniques. So this is the last one.
Okay, so I'm ready for my foils, and as you can see, I've already put 1 foil in, so let me share with you the technique. What I've done is I used the crown as a pivotal base. So I'm taking my section, it's almost a triangle section, but I'm going to take a sliver of that triangle using a slicing technique, because in this case, we're doing kind of a wet on wet or tone on tone. You need to have a little larger section in order for it to visually to be seen when we're done. So I'm taking my foil, using my rat tail comb, putting the comb on the top, laying it right on that parting, fold the hair over, pull my comb out. I'm going to grab my product, okay. I'm going to put it about 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the foil. Then I'm going to hold the foil, and I'm going to paint down. This technique, you also need to use a little bit more product than what you would use on dry hair, because it has to break through the demi-permanent color as well as the natural color. Using the tone-on-tone technique as an add-on service is an awesome idea, just for the fact that when you do all over color, especially refreshing the ends, the ends have been light probably for quite a while. So a client going back to their natural level is going to have a little bit of a shock seeing it all one color. So suggesting the 7 foil technique as an add-on service will just help break up that oneness and give them some dimension. So they really do feel they have like a sun-kissed look. So I'm just going to put in my 3rd foil in the front hairline. And then I'm going to work going from the back as far as the crown, pivoting around the crown, utilizing 4 foils. So Maria?
Okay, so Annie's pattern is complete. As I said before, we did do this with hair color, so she does have to process for approximately 35 minutes. Really nice for your clients. As you saw before, all of that hair was hanging in her face. You want to take the time to move the foils and the hair out, especially when they have to sit for 35 minutes. This way, she's comfortable, she can view a magazine, and I can still get to them pretty easily to check them. So she's all set, and we'll come back when she's finished.
My placement is also complete. It's almost the opposite of what Mindy was doing. Mindy was utilizing her foils to add her nuances inside of her hair, where I was almost, my triangular sections were in between my slices. So it's a little bit different, but now you can really see that this foil ended up a little bit higher, this one ended a little bit lower. So what ends up happening is you get more of a separation where it's a little bit higher, a little bit lower, a little bit higher again, where those nuances end. So I think it's just going to bring a really beautiful movement into Michelle's. Whether her hair is smoother or curlier, it's going to look fantastic. So I'm also going to process 20 minutes, and then we're going to be taking the foils out, emulsifying them all together just to give a little richness and shine on Michelle's ends also, and we'll be complete.
Okay, so Tammy's foil is complete. I'm going to process her for approximately 15 minutes. However, the highlights or the lightener will actually dictate when I take it off. So once Tammy's complete, I'll bring her back to show you the finished look. Well, Tammy's finished look turned out fabulous. So let me just kind of recap what we did for Tammy and her 7 foil technique. First step, I went in with a demi-permanent color, applied it from scalp to end. Then I took 7 foils and I took my sections in triangular sections. The skinny part of the triangle at the crown area, it got a little bit wider towards the front hairline. I did 3 foils in the front. And then in the back crown, the same technique where I pivoted 4 foils in that triangular shape, and you can see what a beautiful explosion of color it created. So with the 7-foil technique as an add-on service, it's going to be a great way to give your customer a fabulous new look in a very short period of time.
Okay, Annie's look is completed, and we got that bronzy color we were looking for, so both of us are very happy. Again, to recap, we did a moon-shaped section. We came in this way skinny, and then fat, and then skinny again. And as we placed the foils in, we did pivot around the section. Really quick, I mean, with 7 foils, you just get an enormous amount of color into the hair, and you can move it around. And the other thing that you can do is you can move your crescent shape around. So you could do it here, you could do it in the back, you could do it on this side. You have a lot of options with that particular shape. So it's great to play around with. Mary Gail?
Thanks, Maria. With Michelle's look, you can see I left a little section out. She parts her hair just a little bit differently, but in these sections you can really see where that depth was added to Michelle's hair. And what ends up happening is when she changes that part line just a little bit, moves it over, you don't even see where any of those darker pieces are. So with Michelle, we did all demi-color, low lights, very skinny slices in the 7 foils going right around her head, but remembering never anything right where she parts her hairline. So you can just see how easy it is that even with 7 foils, what a cast of dimension that puts inside of it. And even with the discreetness of going into a demi-color, it just really added some richness and shine to Michelle's hair. So you can see, even with all 3 of our models, with 7 foils, how much of a difference that can make, whether it be just getting clients interested in color the first time or adding just a little bit of sparkle to what they have. Very easy.